Ladies and gentlemen, we often speak about standing alone as if it's some bold act of defiance, a dramatic gesture to assert independence. But let's strip away the glamour for a moment and face the reality. Standing alone is not about rebellion, it's about responsibility. It's about shouldering the burden of your life and forging meaning in the chaos that surrounds you. Standing alone means accepting the truth that no one else can fight your battles for you. This isn't a romanticized notion of independence or some cinematic declaration of rebellion. It's a stark, uncomfortable reality. Life is fundamentally a solitary journey, no matter how many people walk alongside you. There are moments, critical, defining moments, where you will find yourself face to face with the choices, fears, and challenges that belong to you alone. In those moments, you cannot lean on anyone else. You cannot escape into the comfort of blaming others. It is you, standing on the edge of who you are and who you could be, forced to make a decision. That realization is frightening. It's much easier to imagine that someone else will swoop in to fix the messes, to give us the answers, to alleviate the burden. But no one can do that, not fully. People can care about you. They can advise you, and they can support you in meaningful ways. But at the end of the day, your life is your responsibility. It's you who has to confront your failures, your insecurities, your potential, and your capacity to rise above. And that's not something you can outsource to anyone else. It's terrifying because it strips away every illusion of safety and comfort. But it's also liberating because it means you have the power to shape your own destiny. If you take on the weight of standing alone, you'll discover that you're capable of much more than you ever imagined. Now, it's important to understand that standing alone doesn't mean isolating yourself from the world. This isn't about rejecting connection or cutting yourself off from others. Those who stand alone in the truest sense don't withdraw into solitude, they engage with life fully. They take the responsibility to confront the parts of themselves that others cannot. They stop waiting for external solutions to internal problems. They stop blaming circumstances or other people for where they are. Instead, they look inward. And that's the hardest place to look. Standing alone is not a position of weakness or despair. It's a deliberate act of courage. It's stepping forward even when the ground feels unstable and choosing to move towards something better. That act requires you to face truths about yourself that you might rather avoid. Maybe you've been avoiding a dream because you're afraid of failure. Maybe you've clung to a grudge because it's easier than forgiving and moving on. Maybe you've been numbing yourself with distractions because confronting reality feels unbearable. To stand alone, you have to face these parts of yourself. You have to own them. And that's no small task. But here's the paradox: the weight of responsibility that comes with standing alone is precisely what builds your strength. Think of a muscle, it only grows when it's challenged, when it's subjected to resistance. In the same way, your character develops when you embrace the struggle, when you carry the burdens that are uniquely yours. If you run from them, you stay weak. If you pick them up, even when they feel impossibly heavy, you become stronger. And as you grow stronger, you realize something profound: you are capable of withstanding far more than you thought. You stop underestimating yourself. You begin to trust yourself, not because you're invincible, but because you've proven that you can endure. There's another layer to this as well. When you stand alone, you confront not just your weaknesses, but also your potential. And that's just as daunting. Many of us are more afraid of our potential than our failures. Why? Because potential comes with responsibility. If you acknowledge that you're capable of more, you're also admitting that it's on you to pursue it. It's not enough to blame the world for holding you back. You have to take action. And that's a terrifying prospect because it opens the door to failure. But it also opens the door to growth, and that's a trade-off worth making. Standing alone is not a one-time act. It's a daily commitment. It's the moment you decide to get out of bed when you'd rather stay in. It's the decision to tell the truth when a lie would be easier. It's the courage to take one more step when you feel like giving up. These moments, small as they seem, are what shape your character. And over time, they build a foundation so solid that even the strongest storm can't shake it. What's remarkable is that when you learn to stand alone, you don't become isolated, you become a source of strength for others. People are drawn to those who have faced their battles and come out stronger. When you stand alone, you inspire others to do the same. It's not something you set out to do. It's a byproduct of living with integrity and courage. And in doing so, you create a ripple effect. Your courage gives others permission to find their own. So when you find yourself at that edge, staring into the abyss of uncertainty, don't shy away. Don't wait for someone else to carry you across. Take a deep breath and step forward. Yes, it will be hard. Yes, it will test you. But on the other side of that challenge lies something extraordinary, the person you are capable of becoming. And that's worth everything. Standing alone requires discipline, and discipline is often misunderstood. People tend to think of it as rigid, mechanical, even oppressive, a set of rules imposed from the outside that strip life of spontaneity and joy. But real discipline doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. It's not about following orders or blindly adhering to a routine, it's about mastering yourself. It's about creating order in the chaos of your life so you can aim at something higher and truly meaningful. Without discipline, you're adrift, subject to the whims of fleeting emotions, external distractions, and the inevitable difficulties of life. Discipline isn't a cage, it's a compass. It gives you direction. To stand alone, you need discipline because the path of independence is neither clear nor easy. It's not marked by shortcuts or guarantees. There's no one to push you forward when you hesitate or to pull you back when you go astray. Discipline is what keeps you moving even when the destination feels out of reach. It's the ability to act not because you feel like it, but because you know it's necessary. Feelings are fleeting, discipline endures. It bridges the gap between your present self and your future potential. Imagine this: you're faced with a choice between doing something difficult that aligns with your goals and taking the easier route that leads nowhere. Without discipline, the easy choice wins almost every time. It's human nature to avoid discomfort. We rationalize, procrastinate, and distract ourselves. But discipline doesn't let you off the hook. It reminds you of what you're working toward, and it pushes you to choose the hard thing not because it's enjoyable in the moment, but because it's right. That's the paradox of discipline. The more you practice it, the freer you become. You're no longer a slave to your impulses, excuses, or circumstances. You take control of your life. This doesn't mean discipline is easy. Far from it. It requires effort, and effort is uncomfortable. There will be days when you don't want to follow through, when every fiber of your being resists the very actions you know are necessary. On those days, the disciplined person doesn't rely on motivation because motivation is fickle, it comes and goes. Discipline, on the other hand, is consistent. It's not about how you feel, it's about what you've committed to. It's a choice you make, day after day, no matter the circumstances. The disciplined person structures their life in a way that supports their goals. They create routines not because they love rigidity, but because routines eliminate the need for constant decision-making. Every decision you make depletes your mental energy. If you waste that energy on trivial choices, you have less left for the things that truly matter. Discipline minimizes this by automating the essentials. You decide once, and then you act on that decision repeatedly. This frees up your mind to focus on higher-level challenges and opportunities. But discipline is more than just routines and habits. It's also the courage to do what's necessary when it matters most. It's the ability to stay focused in a world designed to distract you. Every day you're bombarded with noise, notifications, entertainment, endless streams of information. It's easy to lose yourself in it, to drift through life without ever confronting the deeper questions. What do I want? What am I working toward? Who am I becoming? Discipline forces you to cut through the noise. It's the daily practice of saying no to what doesn't serve you so you can say yes to what does. None of this works without a vision. Discipline without purpose is drudgery. You can't endure difficulty for the sake of difficulty. You need a reason. You need a goal, something that justifies the sacrifices discipline demands. And not just any goal, a goal that matters to you on a deep personal level. Without that, discipline becomes hollow, a performance rather than a practice. But with a vision, discipline becomes a tool. Every act of self-control, every choice to persist, every moment of discomfort, it all serves a larger purpose. You're not just enduring for the sake of enduring, you're building something. And that gives meaning to the struggle. To stand alone, you must cultivate discipline because no one else will do it for you. No one is going to impose structure on your life or keep you on track when things get hard. That's your job. Discipline is what separates those who drift from those who achieve. It's what allows you to weather setbacks, to adapt when plans fail, and to keep going when progress feels slow. It's the quiet, steady force that turns potential into reality. And here's the thing: discipline compounds over time. The small acts of self-control you practice today build on each other. They create momentum. At first, it's a struggle just to stay consistent. But as you keep going, you start to see results. Your confidence grows. You trust yourself more. And eventually, discipline becomes second nature. It's no longer something you have to think about, it's who you are. Standing alone isn't glamorous. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic transformations. It's about the daily, often mundane work of showing up, doing what's necessary, and staying true to your path. Discipline is the foundation of that work. It's the thread that ties your actions to your aspirations. And over time, it's what allows you to become the person you were meant to be. To stand alone is to be truthful, first and foremost, with yourself. It means looking in the mirror and seeing what's really there, not what you wish were there or what you hope others see. This kind of honesty is uncomfortable, even painful, because it strips away all the illusions you've built to protect yourself. But without truth, there can be no real growth. Without truth, the foundation of who you are is fragile, ready to crumble under the slightest pressure. Truth is what gives you strength, even when it's hard to bear. When you decide to live truthfully, you begin by confronting your own contradictions. We all have them: the gap between what we say we believe and how we actually behave. You might tell yourself that you value hard work, yet procrastinate when faced with a challenge. You might claim to prioritize relationships, yet neglect the people closest to you. These contradictions, left unchecked, create a kind of inner conflict that wears you down over time. To stand alone with integrity, you must close that gap. You must align your actions with your values, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one else is watching. This is easier said than done, because the world is full of temptations to compromise. It's easier to tell a half-truth than to admit you were wrong. It's easier to stay silent in the face of injustice than to risk backlash. But every time you compromise your integrity, you pay a price. It may not be immediately obvious, but it erodes something essential within you. You lose trust in yourself. You start to question whether you're the kind of person who can be relied upon, even by yourself. And if you can't trust yourself, how can you expect others to trust you? Living with integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about striving to be honest and consistent, even when it's hard. It's about admitting your mistakes instead of hiding them, owning your failures instead of blaming others, and holding yourself accountable, even when no one else will. This kind of honesty is rare because it demands vulnerability. It requires you to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you're flawed and still learning. But in that vulnerability lies tremendous strength. When you stop pretending to be something you're not, you free yourself to become something better. Standing alone with integrity also means refusing to compromise on what you know to be right, even when it costs you. And make no mistake, it will cost you. Integrity often requires sacrifice. It might cost you relationships with people who can't accept your honesty. It might cost you opportunities that would require you to betray your principles. It might cost you comfort, security, or approval. These sacrifices are painful, but they're necessary. Because when you choose integrity over convenience, you're choosing to build your life on a solid foundation rather than a shaky one. And here's the irony: when you stand alone for what's right, you're never truly alone. You may lose the approval of some, but you'll gain the respect of others, people who value authenticity over pretense, who admire courage over conformity. More importantly, you'll gain something even more valuable: self-respect. The person who lives with integrity can look themselves in the eye and say, "I am someone I can rely on." That sense of self-reliance, of being rooted in your values, is what makes you unshakable. Standing alone with integrity doesn't mean being rigid or inflexible. It doesn't mean refusing to listen to others or dismissing viewpoints that challenge your own. On the contrary, integrity requires humility. It means being willing to change your mind when presented with better evidence, to admit when you're wrong, and to learn from your mistakes. But that flexibility is grounded in something firm: your commitment to the truth. You don't change your values to suit the situation, you let your values guide you through it. There's a profound freedom in living this way. When you live with integrity, you're no longer bound by the need to impress others or gain their approval. You're not constantly second-guessing yourself or worrying about being exposed as a fraud. You know who you are, and you're at peace with it. That doesn't mean life becomes easy, far from it, but it does mean you can face its challenges with a sense of clarity and purpose. The truth is, standing alone with integrity is a lifelong practice. It's not something you achieve once and then forget about. Every day you're faced with choices that test your commitment to your principles. Some of these choices are small and seemingly insignificant, like whether to tell a little white lie to avoid conflict. Others are big and life-altering, like whether to stand up for what's right when the stakes are high. Each of these choices matters because they add up over time. They shape who you are and what you stand for. Ultimately, to stand alone with integrity is to take responsibility for your life in the most profound way. It's to say, I will not betray myself no matter the cost. That kind of commitment is rare, and it's powerful. It allows you to face the world with confidence, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest. And in a world full of deception, that honesty is revolutionary. It's what makes you unshakable, trustworthy, and truly free. The reward of standing alone is one of the most profound gifts you can give yourself. At first glance, this might seem counterintuitive. After all, standing alone often feels isolating, difficult, and exhausting. It requires you to face challenges without guarantees, to walk paths where no one can guide you, and to take responsibility for things you might wish you could avoid. The journey is anything but easy, yet the reward it offers is unmatched. You gain yourself, and there is no greater prize than that. When you take the courageous step to stand alone, you begin to see the world differently. You stop looking outward for validation, approval, or permission to live the life you want. Instead, you turn inward and start building a relationship with the one person who will always be with you, yourself. This relationship is foundational. Without it, you're constantly at the mercy of external forces, other people's opinions, societal expectations, fleeting trends. But when you stand alone, you reclaim your independence. You no longer need to conform or perform to feel worthy. Your value isn't tied to anyone else's approval, and that is liberating in a way few things are. This liberation doesn't come without effort. To stand alone, you have to confront your fears, insecurities, and weaknesses. And that process, while painful, teaches you resilience. You start to trust yourself in a way you never did before. You realize that even if you fall, you can get back up. Even if you fail, you can try again. Each time you face a challenge, you're not just surviving it, you're transforming because of it. You're growing stronger, wiser, and more capable. Over time, this accumulation of experiences builds an unshakable foundation within you. The person who stands alone learns that they are enough, not because they have all the answers, but because they're willing to face the questions. One of the most striking rewards of standing alone is the clarity it brings. When you strip away the noise of other people's expectations and the clutter of societal pressures, you're left with a rare opportunity to see yourself for who you truly are. This clarity allows you to identify what really matters to you, what you value, what you want, and who you aspire to be. It gives you the freedom to align your actions with your principles, to pursue goals that are meaningful to you, not ones dictated by others. This alignment is deeply satisfying because it creates a sense of coherence between your inner world and your outer actions. You're no longer living a life that feels disconnected or performative, you're living a life that feels real. There's a misconception that standing alone means being alone, that it's a lonely or isolating experience, but the truth is often the opposite. When you learn to stand alone, you develop an inner strength that attracts others to you. People are drawn to those who are authentic, self-assured, and unafraid to be themselves. When you stand alone, you inspire others to find their own strength. You become a role model, not by seeking to be one, but by living with integrity. Your courage to stand alone gives others permission to do the same, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond yourself. The reward of standing alone also includes a deep sense of peace. This isn't the kind of peace that comes from avoiding conflict or running from challenges. It's the peace that comes from knowing that you're living your life on your own terms. You're not pretending to be someone you're not, and you're not chasing things that don't truly matter to you. This peace is hard-earned, forged in the fires of self-discovery and perseverance, but it's worth every struggle. It's the kind of peace that allows you to face uncertainty with confidence, knowing that whatever happens, you'll be okay because you trust yourself to handle it. Perhaps the most significant reward of standing alone is the person you become in the process. You discover strength you didn't know you had. You uncover a depth of resilience, creativity, and wisdom that surprises even you. Standing alone forces you to stretch beyond your comfort zone, to grow into the kind of person who can handle the weight of responsibility and the freedom of independence. This transformation is priceless because it's not something anyone can give you, it's something you earn. And because you've earned it, no one can take it away. Standing alone also gives you a profound appreciation for connection, not the kind of superficial connection that comes from seeking approval, but the deep, meaningful connections that arise when two people meet as whole individuals. When you stand alone, you bring your full self to relationships. You're not looking for someone to complete you or fix you. You're looking to share your life with someone who respects and values the person you've become. This kind of connection is rare, and it's only possible when you first learn to stand on your own. Ultimately, the reward of standing alone is freedom. Not the fleeting freedom of escaping responsibility, but the enduring freedom of owning your life. It's the freedom to choose your path, to pursue your dreams, and to be unapologetically yourself. This freedom doesn't mean life will be easy. Challenges will still arise and setbacks will still occur. But it does mean that you'll face those challenges from a place of strength and authenticity. You'll know that, no matter what happens, you have the power to stand, to endure, and to grow. Standing alone is not just a challenge, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to become the person you were always capable of being. And that, above all else, is the greatest reward. To stand alone requires courage, but courage is often misunderstood. People think of courage as the absence of fear, but it's not. Courage is not about being fearless, it's about acting despite your fear. It's about stepping forward when every instinct tells you to stay where it's safe. It's about choosing to face the unknown, the uncertain, and the uncomfortable, because you know that staying in the familiar will cost you more in the long run. Courage is not a single act, it's a way of living, a constant choice to push beyond what you think you're capable of. Courage starts with the decision to face reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This takes tremendous bravery because reality is often harsh and unforgiving. It's easier to stay in denial, to avoid the truth, to look the other way. But avoiding the truth doesn't make it any less real. It just delays the moment when you'll have to face it, often making the consequences even harder to bear. Courage means looking at your life honestly, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and taking responsibility for it. It's recognizing where you've fallen short, where you've let fear dictate your choices, and deciding to do something about it. Standing alone with courage also means being willing to take risks. This doesn't mean being reckless or impulsive, it means being willing to step outside your comfort zone in pursuit of something greater. The comfort zone is a seductive place, it's predictable, familiar, and safe. But it's also limiting. Nothing grows there. If you want to achieve anything meaningful, you have to be willing to risk failure, rejection, and disappointment. You have to be willing to try, even when success isn't guaranteed. Courage is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. But crossing that bridge requires you to leave the safety of the shore behind. This willingness to risk is closely tied to vulnerability. Courage and vulnerability are inseparable. To be courageous is to be vulnerable because it means exposing yourself to the possibility of failure, criticism, and loss. It means admitting that you don't have all the answers, that you're not invincible, and that you might get hurt. But it's precisely this vulnerability that makes courage so powerful. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you open the door to growth, connection, and transformation. You stop hiding behind a mask of invulnerability and start living authentically. Courage also means standing up for your values, even when it's unpopular, even when it comes at a cost. There will be times when you're faced with situations that challenge your integrity, where the easier path is the one that compromises your principles. In those moments, courage is the voice that says, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. It's the willingness to face criticism, rejection, and even hostility because you refuse to betray yourself. This kind of courage isn't loud or flashy, it's quiet and steadfast. It's the courage to be true to yourself when the world pressures you to conform. To stand alone with courage is also to embrace uncertainty. Life is unpredictable, and no amount of planning can prepare you for every possibility. The person who lacks courage is paralyzed by this uncertainty. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect conditions that never come. But the courageous person understands that uncertainty is a given, not an obstacle. They act anyway, not because they're certain of the outcome, but because they're committed to the process. They trust that they'll figure it out as they go, that they'll learn and adapt, even if they stumble along the way. Courage is not just about grand acts of heroism, it's about the small, everyday decisions that shape your life. It's the courage to have a difficult conversation, to ask for help when you need it, to set boundaries with people who don't respect you. It's the courage to say no to what doesn't serve you and yes to what does, even when it scares you. These acts may seem small, but they require a kind of bravery that's easy to overlook. Yet it's these small acts of courage that, over time, transform your life. Another essential aspect of courage is perseverance. It's easy to be brave for a moment, but sustained courage, the kind that carries you through setbacks, failures, and doubts, is much harder. Perseverance is what allows you to keep going when the initial excitement has worn off, when progress feels slow, and when the obstacles seem insurmountable. It's the ability to keep moving forward, even when you're tired, discouraged, or afraid. This kind of courage is less about bold leaps and more about steady, determined steps. It's about showing up day after day, even when it feels like you're not making progress. Finally, courage is deeply tied to hope. To act with courage is to believe that your actions matter, that your efforts can make a difference, and that the future holds the possibility of something better. Hope isn't naive optimism or blind faith, it's the belief that no matter how difficult things are, you have the power to influence your circumstances. Courage is what transforms that hope into action. It's what allows you to face challenges not with despair, but with determination. To stand alone with courage is to live fully and authentically. It's to refuse to let fear dictate your life. It's to embrace the unknown, to take risks, and to keep going, even when the path is difficult. Courage isn't about eliminating fear, it's about moving forward in spite of it. And in doing so, you discover not just what you're capable of, but who you truly are. To stand alone is not merely a choice, but a profound journey of self-discovery, resilience, and transformation. It is the courage to face yourself, to live with integrity, to embrace the challenges of life, and to pursue truth with unwavering determination. Each of these keynotes, embracing the discomfort of solitude, grounding yourself in integrity, accepting the responsibility of self-reliance, recognizing the rewards of independence, and summoning the courage to persevere, forms the foundation of a life well lived, one that is not dictated by the approval or expectations of others. Standing alone does not mean isolating yourself from the world, it means finding your strength within so you can engage with the world more authentically. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you're willing to fight for. It's about realizing that while the path may be lonely at times, it is also liberating, empowering, and deeply rewarding. In walking this path, you not only discover your own strength, but you also inspire others to find theirs. The world is full of noise, distractions, and pressures to conform, but standing alone allows you to rise above all of it. It's a declaration that you are the author of your story, the architect of your destiny. It's a commitment to live truthfully, courageously, and unapologetically. And in doing so, you don't just stand apart, you stand tall. You stand firm. You stand as a beacon of what is possible when one refuses to compromise on their values, their vision, and their self-worth. So dare to stand alone. Dare to take the harder path, the one that challenges you to grow and evolve. Dare to face your fears and uncertainties with courage and determination. In doing so, you will find not only the strength to endure, but also the clarity, peace, and fulfillment that come from living a life true to yourself. The journey is demanding, but the reward is unparalleled. You become someone you can respect, someone you can trust, and someone who truly knows the meaning of freedom. And that, above all else, is a life worth living.